then it's a matter of, you can't just flip the switch and all of a sudden I am now this master of self-discipline when it comes to my personal finances. No, you need to put structure in place first. There's something going on that says I am either not earning enough money or I'm spending too much money. And so it's kind of a reality. It's like, okay, how am I going to get out of this? I need to earn more, or I need to live on less, or it could be some combination of those. And I empathize because I did spend a lot of time living paycheck to paycheck. I did spend time in credit card debt, and I know how terrible it is. I know that it's a source of stress and anxiety, which follows you everywhere you go. I know it damages relationships. You're paying just taxes at so many different levels that we don't commonly think about it. And every single one of those is taking a bite out of your ability to be financially successful, whatever that means to you.
Awesome. George, I'm excited to have you on the show today. Why don't you go ahead and take a brief moment and explain to the listeners Money Alignment Academy?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I guess first and foremost, I am a proud American. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I am the president of Money Alignment Academy, and we are a financial wellness, financial literacy platform. And the whole goal is to help people get better at money so they can live the lives that they want. We help a lot of people that don't like to think about money at all, and we help them make sure that they're doing things that they have to be financially successful. And then we help people who are passionate about money and want to learn more about investing and really take an active role in their money. So wherever people are, we try and meet them where they are and then help them get to where they want to go.
Awesome. So is that broken down? I know you have coaching and online courses. Can you explain to somebody who's maybe in debt or they need some investment advice? What does that look like? Is it one-on-one coaching, or are you just going to direct them to an online course? How's that work?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So I guess let me take a quick step back. In my other day job, I'm a financial advisor, registered investment advisor. I do 401k plans for companies. And so that means it's my job to help the employees understand how the 401k works, but then also how it fits into their overall financial situation. And so I've been doing that for a really long time, 20 years at this point. And you recognize that people just need a lot more help than they're getting. And so that was sort of the seed that started Money Alignment Academy. I thought, how can I do a better job for my clients? And I started in 2015 before there were, sort of ubiquitous online courses, started making those. And so we have, I think, 20 some online courses on demand that people can go and take on pretty much every topic. But then I also realized community is a really, really big part in helping us to get things done. If I want to lose weight, I join Weight Watchers because there's a community. If I want to start drinking, I join Alcoholics Anonymous because there's a community. And so we also embrace cohort-based learning. So just groups of people who have a common interest. We're interested in getting out of debt. So we run what we call sprints pretty consistently as well. In fact, every week we start a new sprint. And it's either a week-long course or a 2-week course that we all go through it together. So there's an opportunity to be interacting with the other folks who are going through the course. So there's that. We also offer, like you mentioned, one-on-one coaching. So if people want that, they can absolutely do that. And then there's also interactive different opportunities throughout the month. We have something called office hours where people can just drop in to a Zoom call, not unlike this one, and get any question answered. We've got live webinars that we have going on all the time as well. So people just want to passively sit and learn and watch and, again, get some questions answered. There's opportunities to do that. So really try to attack it from as many different ways as possible.
Your background is finance. Can you break down what it was that you did prior to starting Money Alignment Academy?
Yeah. Well, like so many other people, my path was just clear. It was totally lined out. Of course it wasn't, I, growing up, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was a grown up or an adult, and happened into financial services. My first job out of college was selling life insurance with New York Life. And that was in 2001. So we are now literally 20 years from the time that I started, which, if anybody's been working for 20 plus years, you're like, how in the world did that happen? But I started early just doing that. And that morphed and evolved over the course of my career to today. Like I mentioned, I own and operate a financial firm. Our main push is doing retirement plans for companies. Honored to have been named to Investopedia's list of the top 100 financial advisors for 4 years in a row. Um, and I think that that is really a byproduct of the work that I do with Money Alignment Academy. And I do a blog every day, and I do a daily podcast called Lifeblood. And we've been doing that for 5 years as well. So,
And then I noticed recently you had a blog post out that kind of talked about chuckling at the current recession and getting yourself prepared for kind of where we're at in this turmoil, financial turmoil, or confusion is probably a better way to say it. Because you have right now, there's so many experts that some are saying, hey, this is going to be the worst crash that we've ever seen. Others are saying, this isn't even a recession. Like, and what is a recession? And definitions are skewed. How does somebody navigate these waters right now? What is, in your best opinion, how do we determine first who to listen to and then what to do?
yeah, it's like the question of our time right there. It's like, oh my gosh, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, the world is falling, the sky is falling, the world is crashing, everything is a mess. But everything seems to be okay here. So I guess the other shoe's going to drop pretty soon. It's really hard, and we
Mm-hmm.
find ourselves in a time where it's hard to know what information to trust. And this is not new information. Everybody has experienced this, and we're frustrated by it. None of it's really good. What I always encourage people to do, and this is true if you are freaked out about global warming, if you're freaked out about abortion or gun control or the economy, so you need to focus on the part of the garden that you can reach. It's a great Jack Cornfield quote. He said, tend to the part of the garden you can reach. I can't do anything about the economy. I can't do anything about the stock market. And nobody knows what's going to happen with the stock market. Nobody does. Nobody knew what was going to happen in 2008. Nobody knew what was going to happen in 2000, and nobody knows what's going to happen in 2022. So it's a crappy reality, and maybe to a degree a throwaway answer, but it's the wisest one that I can give. So you need to control your controllables. So that
Mm-hmm.
means, do you have, do you track your cash flow on a monthly basis? Do you understand that? Yes, no, maybe so. Do you keep a budget? Do you know what your money beliefs are? So your operating system, we all have one just like our phones do. So when you get an input, your mind runs with it. That's your hardware and your software. So do you think that money is a good thing or a bad thing? Is money the root of all evil, or does money give you options? So that's a really important thing for you to be exploring and thinking about. I think a conversation about your values right now and what you really
Mm-hmm.
think is important, what you're going to stand for and what you stand against. That is going to become the lens through which you view the world and how you allocate your most important resources, your time, your attention, and your money. And it's a function of then, am I doing everything within my control to position myself to be successful with whatever happens to come down the road? And then the final part of that is, do you have 6 months worth of expenses saved up in cash? And that pre-pandemic, I would have said, oh, you should have 3 months worth of an emergency fund. Today, well, theoretically speaking, post-pandemic, maybe post-pandemic, where we are right now in August of 2022, you need to have 6 months or more saved up in an emergency fund just in cash. If you do all those things that I just laid out, which are not easy, I'm not saying it's easy to have 6 months worth of expenses saved up, but if you do those things, then you're well positioned for whatever comes next. If it's the next variation of a horrible disease that hasn't been around for 100 years, or if it's China or Russia or whatever, I don't know what's going to happen. But I know that if you do those things, you position yourself for as best you can for whatever happens.
You touched on something in that answer. You talked about your money beliefs. And I don't think a lot of people realize that how they think about money determines a majority of their financial situation. Can you break down a little bit what it is, some of those possible false beliefs, and then also how to then start changing those beliefs so that you're thinking the right things to then help change your financial situation?
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And maybe I'll start with an example of just me. So I grew up in northern Minnesota. My mom is an amazing lady. She still is. She was a school teacher, single mom. And so we were middle class. It's not like we were poor, but there was never enough money to go around. And once a month, my mom would pay bills. And that meant that she'd get all the bills spread out on the kitchen table. My older brother and I knew that when she was paying bills, we stayed away because it was stressful, because there was not enough money to pay everything or just not enough to get
Mm.
everything done that needed to be done. So that's when I was a little kid. And a lot of our beliefs about things, love, relationships, the government, money, it was either given to us via DNA or downloaded from the time that we were 0 to about age 5 or 6. So a lot of the ways that you operate in the world are because of the experiences you had when you were a kid. And if we don't think about that stuff, well, we're just going to behave in a certain way. So with me, it was money avoidance. Even though I was working as a financial person, I never budgeted. I never monitored my cash flow. Fortunately, I was making good money, but some months I wouldn't make any money. And so I was broke. I was living paycheck to paycheck, using credit cards and rolling balances over. I would wait until the last minute to pay bills. I was scared to death of filing income taxes. Believe it or not, those are not a recipe for financial success. And then you realize, like, why am I interacting with money this way? I intellectually understand I'm supposed to be doing essentially the opposite of everything that I'm doing, but my emotions and my behaviors, just this is what I was doing. And I started to peel those layers back. It's okay. What is a behavior that is not beneficial? Me not paying attention, me not tracking my cash flow. Okay. I wonder why I'm doing that. And I was able to trace it back. Okay. Just money was always tight with my family. And so it was better just to avoid it than to address these things. And so there's a just go through sort of a um I wish that I could direct you exactly to a resource, but at just it's kind of like when you're triggered by different scenarios. When you hear somebody in the newspaper say, if you buy a cup of coffee, it's from becoming a millionaire. If you're like, yeah, that's absolutely right, or if you say that's the dumbest thing in the world, or if you hear somebody say Donald Trump, you're going to have some reaction. You're going to love him or you're going to hate him. So when it's money related and you get triggered or you recognize that your behavior is off, that's your indication that you need to dig a little bit deeper. And then when you do recognize it, then it's a matter of you can't just flip the switch and all of a sudden I am now this master of self discipline when it comes to my personal finances. No, you need to put structure in place first. Put structure in place by, for example, you automate all your bill pay. You get enrolled in your 401k at work and start automatically making contributions so that you're paying yourself first. You download the Mint app to be following a budget. And then once you start with the structure and you automate as much as you possibly can, then you'll start to develop self-discipline. Then you'll strengthen that muscle. And I think that that'll help you to sort of work through that process of rewiring your brain, because to your point, it's extremely possible to do that.
Mm, great answer. Thank you. You talked about automating 401ks, and again, kind of this August 2022, people look at their 401ks if they dare to, and are like, I'm not liking what I see. A year ago, this was twice as much as it's in there now. What are your thoughts on some of the other tools for investing when it comes to real estate or even cryptocurrencies and NFTs and some of this that stuff that it's like, okay, now NFT, what is that? Non-fungible token. We're off in a different world. I thought we were talking about money here.
Yeah. And these are really, really important questions and things to be thinking about right now, because there's so many new things that are out there. And new things are neither good nor bad, and old things are neither good nor bad. A mutual fund is not a good thing or a bad thing. Your 401k is not a good thing or a bad thing. Bitcoin is not good or bad. They are all just what they are. And we
Mm.
identify and become very tribal about these things, particularly with crypto, which I think is great. If you want to get super excited and put pictures of lasers coming out of your eyes on your social media, then I'm all for it. But let's always work to approach anything that we're going to be putting money into as logically and level-headedly as we possibly can be. So when it comes to thinking about how to allocate your money, I really do think that taking a diversified approach is one of the keys to being successful long term. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be invested in individual stocks. It doesn't mean you shouldn't go buy your Bored Ape or whatever it is, or your NFT or your Ethereum or your Dogecoin or whatever. But here's my recommendation: is that you don't ever put more than 5% of your net worth in any one concentrated investment. So if you want to go buy an NFT or a cryptocurrency, and I don't own any NFTs, but I do own cryptocurrencies. I think I do own Dogecoin. I bought it a long time ago. I think I still do, if it's still a thing. I own Bitcoin. And I own Ethereum. But I gave myself permission to do that because I am on track to meet my other most important financial goals and objectives. Bulk of my money is in very boring mutual funds and exchange traded funds. So those are very well diversified. And because I'm doing that, I wrote myself a permission slip, figuratively, to go and invest in individual stocks, NFTs, or cryptocurrency. So you might love, well, I think that right now, I don't know what Bitcoin is trading at. It's probably in the low 20s still. Um, it could go to $1 million of Bitcoin, but it could also go to zero. And that's so I think that is a reality there. So if you are trying to figure out how do I balance all this stuff, well, I think that the core of your portfolio, so the bulk of it, should be really boring. It should be low cost, well diversified exchange traded funds or mutual funds. And if you do that, then you have the ability to go and purchase other assets. And I'm all for real estate too. So I guess we're probably going to go down the path of getting a little too far into the weeds, but I imagine that you probably got the point.
Yeah. So to change gears, not too much, but just a little bit. We've been talking about what are some decent steps that you can do to kind of prepare and make sure that you're in a good financial point. What do you feel is the best actionable advice you could give the other half of America? Because more than half of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and so we can talk about a lot of these. Hey, make sure you're allocating over here, over there. But when you're squeezing as much as you can get out of each quarter and out of each penny, how do you get out of that cyclical hamster wheel feeling of I'm just trying to make it to payday?
Yeah, this is something I've spent an awful lot of time on. I spend a lot of time thinking about it, and I empathize because I did spend a lot of time living paycheck to paycheck. I did spend time in credit card debt, and I know how terrible it is. I know that it's a source of stress and anxiety, which follows you everywhere you go. I know it damages relationships. And so we need to do when should you find yourself in that position, you need to do everything you can to break free of those cycles. So getting out of debt, getting out of credit card debt, got to be, I don't know what you can do first. You certainly sort of working towards breaking out of that paycheck to paycheck cycle while you're also trying to figure out how to pay off credit card debt. And I never took a vow of poverty. I'm not a monk, and I don't expect other people to take a vow of poverty either. I joked about the coffee thing. I go and get coffee probably every day, and so, but what screws us up more often than not, it's not the little things, it's the big things. So my advice is evaluate where it is that you are making your largest capital expenditures, which is the house that you're living in or the apartment that you're renting, the vehicle that you're driving, and the food away from home. And I also appreciate that those things give us an immense amount of joy. And I know that money is time sensitive. The longer that we wait to be pursuing those long-term goals and objectives, the harder it becomes to actually make it happen. So there's something going on that says I am either not earning enough money or I'm spending too much money. And so it's kind of a reality. It's like, okay, how am I going to get out of this? I need to earn more or I need to live on less. Or it could be some combination of those. I just watched a video about living in California, and I spent 3 years living in California. And for a lot of people, the numbers just don't work out. If you want to own a home in California, it's like on average, it's like $1 million. So I need to come up with what? At least a 10% down payment, so 100 grand. And then my mortgage is going to be what, like 6 grand a month. So to be able to pay for that in the income tax rate environment that is California, I need to be making, $12,000, $15,000 a month. So that just doesn't pencil out for the majority of people. So what do? Well, I might need to make a huge choice and move somewhere else. And that could be the answer to your question or to your situation as well. Not you, Chris, but to the person who's listening to this. But these are the questions we need to ask and the evaluations that need to be made. So
You talked about California and they have such a high tax bracket, especially for their income tax. How many people do you think and do you work with? And is this something that you guys encourage looking into? Realize that their biggest expense monthly is mostly taxes. For most people, their biggest expense is taxes. And it's a hidden expense because for most people, it comes out before they even get their paycheck. All they see is what's after taxes. And is that something that people need to take a look at and see? And we always like to vilify the rich people and say, oh, they don't pay taxes. And and then we can kind of get into that. Is that even true? And how's that scenario? I know it's a very broad question to kind of start with, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
yeah, and it's a lot for us to get our brains around. And there's some philosophical questions in there that are certainly worth considering and worth thinking about. But just the first one, it is hidden unless you really think about it. And then you start looking at all the different taxes that we pay. We obviously pay federal income tax, then you pay a state income tax, and California is certainly one of the highest. You're paying tax on your real estate, and when your real estate, when the values are really high, and that means that your property tax is also going to be a pretty good chunk of change. You're paying sales tax. You're paying just taxes at so many different levels that we don't commonly think about it. And every single one of those is taking a bite out of your ability to be financially successful, whatever that means to you. Interestingly, I think that the top 10% of income earners in the United States pay like 80% of the income tax. Half of Americans don't pay any income tax at all. And so the bulk of tax revenue that the government takes in comes from high income earners. There's no two ways about that. So I know that it's a talking point that people say, oh, they need to pay their fair share. Well, I don't know what that is, and nobody really knows what that is. But the fact is that they pay most of the taxes. And I'm not, that's not me. I'm not a billionaire by any stretch of the imagination. So just understand that these folks are paying a lot of taxes, and corporations also pay a lot of taxes. And it's it's important to understand all the different kinds of taxes that a corporation also pays, more so than just their federal income tax every year. And the federal tax code is enormous. It's like 7,000 pages, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there's tens of thousands of pages of case law that are around are just the actual use of the tax code. And the tax code is as complex as it is. So it's asking to be used. It's asking to be manipulated, for lack of a better term. And if it wasn't, then it wouldn't be that way. And if the government really had problems with the way that things were, then they would be overhauling the tax code. But either there's not an appetite for it, or that's an impossibility, or whatever. So, not sure I answered your question there, but I guess what's most important is that yes, you need to know how much you're paying in taxes and how these things are affecting your personal situation. And I think that when you do look at the migration patterns out of some states and into others, taxes certainly play a role in that.
Hmm. So would you encourage or suggest people look into possibly starting their own business and finding and being able to take some time to learn about the tax code and learn some of the benefits that you get of owning your own company and being able to write off certain things that you use daily that maybe would benefit you on your tax side of things?
Yeah, for sure. I think that that entrepreneurship is it's one of the most wonderful things that is out there. And if you're interested in one day becoming wealthy or being financially independent, then entrepreneurship is really the key to that. It is the greatest vehicle to be able to do that. And so there's lots of benefits and reasons why one would do that. If you're in a situation where you can't seem to get ahead or you're looking at your career path, it says, okay, 10 years from now, if you continue doing what you're doing, what will your ultimate income be? Your ultimate earning potential, what's that going to be? Well, that's another reason. Okay, maybe I can start some kind of a side hustle or start a company or a business, even if it's just I have an hour a day to be putting towards this. I mean, I think that that's one of the secrets and the keys to being successful long term with any kind of an endeavor is just taking small bites and just incrementally moving towards the life that you're interested in having. Because certainly, yes, there are lots of different reasons that owning a business is beneficial.
Getting back to what we talked about a little bit earlier and kind of your expertise of what you do outside of Money Alignment Academy is I don't, I know we could get down into the minutia, but is a 401k beneficial? Are mutual funds, you can find experts that say, hey, mutual funds are, Dave Ramsey's a big proponent of mutual funds, but then there's other people that are, that's just Wall Street's way of taking your money. Can you speak into some of the push pull on some of these things as far as is it beneficial for someone who doesn't have time to manage a portfolio?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. I'm super excited and super happy that companies like Robinhood have come online and increased excitement and awareness of the world of trading. And then the reality is that the vast majority, like 80% of people who go on those platforms lose money. And experts in the business talk about how that's your tuition. It's like if you think that you're going to go and just start making money trading individual stocks, you're wrong. You will pay your tuition by losing money, and then you'll start learning. So, like anything else, if you just think you're going to pick up a tennis racket and become a great tennis player, you are wrong. So, why would investing and trading be any different than that? So, it's really, really, really dangerous to go and buy individual stocks. I do it. I own a ton of them, but I also own a ton of mutual funds. You can go buy the S&P 500, an ETF by Fidelity, for free. Literally is free. So when people say it's Wall Street getting rich, well, okay, maybe. Used to be that mutual funds were super expensive, like 200 basis points or 2%, and some of them still are. But you can get a low cost mutual fund for free, like a really high quality, well diversified exchange traded fund. The S&P 500 tracks the 500 biggest companies in the United States. That means you own a small piece of all 500 of those companies for literally free. So um, there's also middle ground in there, and there's always room for nuance. But going back to the whole idea that a mutual fund isn't good or bad, some are crappy, some are awesome, but just the idea of it, it's not good or bad. Real estate's not good or bad. Crypto isn't good or bad. It's really informing yourself and then acting appropriately. The majority of people lose money in investing because of the way that their brain is responding. It's like I intellectually know that I'm supposed to buy when things are low and sell when things are high, but I do the opposite, right? It's like when things are really high, I want to go buy Bitcoin. It's at 100,000 a Bitcoin. I'm going to go buy some. It's at 20. Oh, no, now nobody wants to buy it. I totally don't get it, right? Versus when the stock market goes down, no, I've got to sell my shares. Oh my gosh. So it's just the opposite of what we should be doing. Here's an interesting thing. I know that we're sort of short on time, But the only time that you want the stock market to be good is the day you're going to sell your shares. So if you're 35 years old, talking about your 401k, you want the stock market to be crap for the next 30 years. Think about it like this. Would you rather buy Amazon at $1 a share or $1,000 a share?
A
I'd rather
dollar.
buy Amazon at $1 a share for the next 30 years. So I have a ton of them. And then when I'm going to go sell to retire, I want it to go to $1,000 a share. So it's kind of a weird mind F, but that's really the perspective. So taking time horizon into consideration when you're going to be using the money that you're saving and investing, that's super important. And it'll help you sort of keep your perspective healthy.
Mhm. Awesome. As we start to wrap up, there is one question I like to ask all the listeners is what is the one lesson you've learned in life or oh sorry, there is one question I like to ask all the guests. What is one lesson you've learned in life that you want to share with the listeners?
You got to take it like you mean it. We got one crack at this deal. Go around the track one time. 52 Saturdays a year. Got to maximize everything. And it's super easy to
Mm.
just be going through the flow, to be letting life take you in its current. And I'm doing this because that's what my dad did or my mom did. And this is what our family does. So you're living on somebody else's terms. You're living under somebody else's assumptions, somebody else's system. But the only way to live how you want is to know how you want to live. So take the time to think about what you want your life to look like. Once you know what that is, if it happens to be different than what you currently have, well, then put plans in place for getting that life that you really want and do it now. You and I don't have time.
Wow. Thank you for that's an awesome answer. I appreciate you taking time to come on the show today. For anyone that's looking to get in touch with George, I'll put a link down below in the show notes to his website, all his social media. If you like this podcast, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And George, thank you for coming on the show. Man.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah.